In today's video, we're diving into the character of Rory Gilmore. If you don't know, Rory is one of the most iconic figures from the 2000s TV series Gilmore Girls. She graced our screens for 7 years straight, becoming a fan favorite, or at least she used to be. Over time, many viewers have started to question their love for Rory. In fact, some have even labeled her as one of the most frustrating or least likable characters on the show. Today, we're going to explore why Rory Gilmore is the way she is, dissect her character, and reveal who she truly is behind the perfect bookish exterior. I think anyone, teenager or adult, who's ever watched Gilmore Girls has, at some point, felt a twinge of jealousy toward Rory Gilmore. Some even feel it to extremes. Some people strive to be like her, while others strive to be her complete opposite. But why is that? Why does she feel so unattainable? What kind of glass house is Rory living in that we can't seem to break into, yet we can watch her revel in it? Why does her life feel so perfectly orchestrated, so poignantly beautiful? On the surface, there's an easy answer: TV show magic. But behind that magic, there's a lot more going on. There are psychological layers at play, reasons why Rory Gilmore is the way she is, why the world sees her the way it does, and why, as an audience, we sometimes envy her so deeply. Well, to start, Rory has been raised in a world where, whether you like it or not, everyone else is subtly positioned as beneath her. From Stars Hollow to Chilton, and even at Yale, Rory is consistently portrayed as exceptional, someone ideal in nearly every way. The only person who even comes close is her mother, Lorelai, though whether Lorelai surpasses Rory is up for debate. Either way, Rory exists in a context where it's easy for her to be seen and to see herself as superior. Everyone around her is depicted with exaggerated quirks, odd habits, or eccentric appearances, making Rory and Lorelai stand out not just as physically attractive, but as composed, capable, and normal in comparison. But it's not just looks. Rory and Lorelai have their quirks too. Rory's bookish obsession, her intense perfectionism, her socially awkward moments. Lorelai's snappy humor, impulsiveness, and unconventional ways of handling life. The difference is that their quirks are framed as charming, endearing, or even signs of intelligence and individuality. They are self-aware, and crucially, they combat their flaws through competence, wit, or empathy. Contrast this with the other characters in Stars Hollow. Their quirks are often amplified into caricatures. People are eccentric, petty, or just too much in ways that highlight Rory and Lorelai's balance. The town is full of oddities, over-the-top personalities, stubborn habits, and comic flaws, all of which make Rory's poise, intelligence, and likability stand out even more. This is a classic TV technique. Shows often exaggerate secondary characters' flaws to make the protagonist shine. Take Daria, for example. Daria Morgendorffer is the smartest, most grounded character in a world of caricatures. Everyone around her is portrayed as over the top, making Daria appear more competent, sane, and admirable. Rory's perfection isn't just in her intelligence, her looks, or her drive. It's also in how her quirks are handled. Her flaws don't alienate her, they enhance her relatability and charm because the show frames them with self-awareness and growth. Her world is constructed so that her strengths are amplified, her quirks are endearing, and her failures feel meaningful rather than catastrophic. This careful balance is why Rory feels unattainable, why viewers admire her but sometimes envy her, and why she remains such a memorable character long after the series ends. Of course, there are a few characters who come close to Rory and Lorelai in terms of sanity, stability, looks, and social acceptance. These are usually characters who are closely connected to them. Luke, their romantic partners, and sometimes even Emily and Richard, or a few friends. But even then, their strengths are limited. They are only impressive in comparison because they orbit Rory and Lorelai. In most cases, they don't quite match up. They aren't as polished, as effortlessly capable, or as compelling as the two protagonists. So who is the Rory we knew before Yale? The Rory before she cheated on Dean, not just physically, but emotionally. Who was she? Why did we like her so much? And what changed? We were introduced to a smart, driven, kind, and empathetic person. We were introduced to Rory Gilmore, the next teen idol for the next 20 years. Rory was considered the ideal for any teenager growing up at that time, and even now, many would agree she still represents that. She was competent, capable, and grounded. Everyone in Stars Hollow, everyone who knew Rory, believed she was destined for great things. And so did we, as viewers. Never could we have imagined that Rory would end up where she did. The Rory we met at the start of Gilmore Girls isn't the Rory we see by the end. She's almost a completely different person. And you can't really blame her for that. People grow up, people change. After years of being this seemingly perfect person, Rory eventually broke down, and she did so right in front of us. As viewers, our reactions were mixed, sometimes harsh, but also understandable. Some of what Rory did was unreasonable, unfair, even downright intolerable. And yet within the show, most of her actions were forgiven or brushed aside with surprising ease. That said, there were exceptions. Her major fallout with Lorelai wasn't taken lightly. And it couldn't be. Lorelai's reaction reminded us that, for once, Rory wasn't untouchable. She was flawed, vulnerable, and finally facing consequences that couldn't be smoothed over with charm or intellect. So now, to answer the most important question, what happened to Rory Gilmore? When did it happen? And how? Was it just a matter of growing up? Was it the sudden rush of a new life? The attention? The endless praise she'd been getting since she was 16? Or was it something deeper, something about who she always was, hidden beneath all that perfection? Because somewhere along the way, the Rory we knew began to change. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow, subtle, and almost unnoticeable until it wasn't. That's what makes it so murky. We can't pinpoint the exact moment, but we can trace the shift, the first cracks in the image, the small choices that started steering her away from who she used to be. If we really think about it, Rory's change didn't begin at Yale. It culminated there, but the seeds were planted earlier. The first signs show up at the end of her time at Chilton. Up until then, Rory's world was small, structured, and safe. Everyone around her believed in her mother, her teachers, the entire town. Rory was the gifted kid, the small-town prodigy destined for greatness. She never had to question that. But the moment she stepped into Yale, she entered a world where everyone was just as smart, just as talented, just as ambitious. For the first time in her life, she wasn't special. And that shook her entire sense of self. Her identity had always been built on being the best. When that security disappeared, she began to seek validation elsewhere, in relationships, in appearances, in comfort. That's when we start seeing her shift. The cheating on Dean wasn't just a romantic mistake, it was symbolic. It marked the first time Rory acted on impulse instead of principle. She wasn't the grounded, morally steady girl we'd known. She was lost, craving the same sense of importance she once got from being perfect. Then came Logan. Her relationship with him represents a deeper transformation. Logan's world, the wealth, the confidence, the recklessness, exposed Rory to privilege and freedom she'd never known before. It was intoxicating. For a while, she lived in it, tried to blend into it, even justify it. But that life came with a cost. She started internalizing that privilege. Her entitlement grew subtly. She began believing she deserved certain things, respect, success, admiration, without realizing she'd stopped earning them the way she once did. And when Mitchum Huntsberger told her she didn't have what it takes, it shattered the illusion completely. It wasn't just about journalism, it was about her identity. For the first time, someone powerful didn't see her as special. And instead of fighting back, Rory broke. She spiraled, quit Yale, and ran away from everything she'd built her self-worth around. That moment, her decision to drop out, is where Rory Gilmore truly changed. It's the turning point where the perfect girl cracked open, revealing someone uncertain, insecure, and desperate to be seen again. And that's what makes her so fascinating. She didn't just fall from grace, she fell into reality. She became flawed, confused, human. The very things that once made her admirable, ambition, confidence, self-belief, became the same traits that led to her downfall when they went unchecked. But before we go on hating Rory Gilmore, we have to ask, why did the writers choose to make her fall in the first place? Why did they decide to strip away everything that made her perfect? It wasn't accidental. Rory's downfall wasn't sloppy writing, it was deliberate storytelling. The writers built her up as this flawless, almost mythical figure, only to show what happens when perfection meets reality. Rory's flaws were meant to expose the quiet, inevitable collapse of a gifted child who never learned how to fail. And that brings us to a bigger question. Is Rory Gilmore really an exception, or just another version of a very familiar story? The gifted child trope is everywhere. The overachiever who's praised so much that their entire identity starts to depend on being special. They grow up equating worth with success, and the moment life stops rewarding them, they lose their sense of self. That's exactly what happened to Rory. She didn't just fail, she lost the version of herself that the world loved. Her behavior, the entitlement, the arrogance, the aimlessness, wasn't random. It was the fallout of someone who'd been told she could do no wrong until the world told her she wasn't enough. And in that sense, her breakdown wasn't just believable, it was inevitable. But here's where it gets interesting. Why were we, the audience, so eager to hate her for it? We loved Rory when she was the quiet, diligent overachiever, someone we could root for or even aspire to be. But the moment she became human, when she started making the same mistakes we all do, we turned on her. Maybe it's because we don't like watching perfect girls lose control. Maybe it's because her story hits too close to home. The idea that being smart and good and kind doesn't actually guarantee anything. Whatever the reason, our reaction says as much about us as it does about Rory. We wanted her to stay perfect because that made us feel safe, like the world still rewarded good people. But Rory's fall reminded us that growing up means falling apart sometimes. And maybe that's exactly what she was meant to show us all along. And finally, maybe Rory never stopped being a fantasy. Maybe she just became the version of it that hurts. The one where growing up doesn't look like success, but survival.